Institute of Law, Nirma University. Welcome our esteemed guest speakers for this evening. And to introduce our speakers, the Institute of Law, Nirma University is observing its International Teaching Month. We observe this every February of the year, wherein we invite our foreign speakers who are best in their respective areas to have dialogue, to know more from their expertise, and to give our students the platform to learn in a collaborative manner. As a result of this discourse, we are today here to discuss about artificial intelligence, the emerging area in the current times, from two of our esteemed speakers, Dr. Steve Robinson, and our second speaker for the day is Professor Dr. V.C. Vivekanandan. Now, before we move forward further with the session, I would like to request our Director and Dean, Professor Dr. Purvi Pokhriyal, to deliver the inaugural address.
Thank you, Dr. Bishwa Das. It's indeed a great pleasure to have with us on this evening Dr. Steve Robinson and Professor V.C. Vivekanandan. It's a great pleasure. I remember Dr. Steve Robinson had visited Nirma University and had delivered a keynote address before 2 years in one of our conferences when we had the first time talk on AI and legal implications. And I presume that since then, Dr. Robinson has developed an interest and, has been further reviewing and researching on this area. When it comes to intellectual property rights and AI and technology and law, Professor V.C. Vivekanandan is a big name in Indian academia. We are great to have you, sir, with us today. Professor V.C. Vivekanandan also has been a friend of Nirma University Institute of Law, has been with us on a number of occasions earlier. And Professor V.C. Vivekanandan is an amazing speaker. I'm a big fan of your talk, sir. Thank you, thank you very much for joining us today. As we all know, Dr. Steve Robinson is not a lawyer himself per se, but he has been into the policy area for quite a long time. And probably Dr. Steve Robinson would be giving us some insight on the policy aspects of AI in this country and how, with reference to the AI policy formulation, the US is progressing. So we are going to have an amazing time on this evening. We welcome you on behalf of Nirma University, on behalf of students and faculty colleagues. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Now it's time to know our speakers. And first of all, we do not need to introduce the speakers of the day because they are the stalwarts in their respective field. But for the sake of convenience of all our audience, introducing Dr. Steve Robinson, who has been the Special Assistant to the White House Domestic Policy Council and Executive Officer of the President and retired. Dr. Steve was in the Department of Education as a special advisor to the Secretary. Prior to joining the department, Dr. Robinson served as a legislative assistant for education in the office of the then Senator Barack Obama, advised on policy development during the presidential campaign, and worked on educational issues with Obama-Biden presidential transition team. Dr. Steve also first joined as the office of the Senator Obama in 2005, supported as a fellow through Albert Einstein Distinguished Educator Fellowship Program. During his time as a Senate staffer, he has served as a mentor for students in DCPS, as a reading tutor for elementary grade students, and as a math tutor with middle school students. And prior to joining as Senator Obama's office, Dr. Steve was a high school science teacher in Eugene, Oregon. He grew up in the suburbs of Chicago and has been all throughout his life involved in the policymaking process. That's Dr. Steve for us as on date. Now, taking time to introduce Professor Dr. V.C. Vivekanandan, Vice-Chancellor, Hidayatullah National Law University, Raipur. Dr. Vivekanandan has 3 decades of teaching and research experience in legal education and served at National Law School, Bangalore, Nalsar, Hyderabad between 1990 and 2017. He has also been the Dean at Rajiv Gandhi School of Intellectual Property Law at IIT Kharagpur, one of the premier institutions of India between 2009 and 10, and was the founding dean of School of Law, Bennett University, Greater Noida during 2017 and 19. He holds bachelor's degree and master's degree and PhD degree in law, apart from master's in philosophy degree in public administration. But Professor Vivekanandan was appointed as the MHRD chair professor in the year 2008 and 9, and again in 2010 and 17. During his tenure, he has also represented Government of India in negotiation of SCCR meets at Geneva as an official delegate from 2013 to 15. That's the whole credentials of both our speakers for the day. But before I hand over the mic and the podium virtually to Dr. Steve Robinson, a few protocols for our audience. I shall be assisting Professor Steve as well as Professor Vivekanandan throughout the session as the moderator of the session. It is requested all of you to please put yourself on mute throughout the session and keep your videos on. Do you have any question, please direct that to me in the personal chat box. I will be facilitating the same as and when required to both our speakers. Without further ado, I would now request Dr. Steve Robinson to deliver his speech. Please, sir.
Good morning from Washington, D.C. Good evening where you are. Thank you for the kind introduction, Dr. Desh, and the invitation, Dr. Pocario. I'm going to share my screen and we'll get going. So, here we go. So as was mentioned, I am not a lawyer and I am not a computer scientist, but I'm very interested in artificial intelligence. And what I'm going to give today is basically an overview of artificial intelligence and some thoughts about my understanding of what's happening in India, because I think that India is very far ahead of the United States in terms of thinking about the role of artificial intelligence and the importance of artificial intelligence in society. Recently, in January, your Prime Minister gave an address at the Davos conference where he talked basically about two things. One was about COVID, but the second thing he talked about was Industry 4.0 and how this will be driven by artificial intelligence. So speaking at the Davos conference, he talked about AI and other technologies and how they would spur the fourth industrial revolution in India. And India is in, I think, an advantageous position for being a leader in artificial intelligence, partly because of the excellence of engineering expertise in India, but also because of the huge population, which gives the ability to generate a huge amount of data, which is basically what artificial intelligence thrives on. So the Industry 4.0 is basically this, the idea that artificial intelligence is a new paradigm for driving industry and the economy of the 21st century. The first revolution being steam, then electricity, then computers in the late 20th century. But now we've moved kind of beyond computers in many ways to big data, to artificial intelligence, to IoT, the Internet of Things, and work on the cloud. That's really what Industry 4.0 is. So what is artificial intelligence? We use this term often, but I'm going to give a number of examples of different things that are in artificial intelligence. So this is a diagram that shows kind of the umbrella of all of the things that might be considered artificial intelligence: problem solving, deep learning, machine learning, robotics. I'll give examples of many of these with different videos and different examples. And the structure of what we're going to go through today is basically the following. How do we think about thinking machines? How do we think about artificial intelligence? So first I'll talk about artificial intelligence now. What are some of the applications? What are some of the ways that artificial intelligence is used that you may know about, and some you may not know about, some which are advanced, and it's a very quickly advancing field. How do machines become intelligent? So I'll talk a little bit about machine learning. How do machines actually become smarter? We know how we become smarter by learning. How do machines actually learn? Then I'll talk a little bit about some issues of future AI, or some things that are happening right now that bleed into the future that will give us some ideas of where AI may be heading. And then some concerns about some of these advanced techniques, some of the things that might be happening now, some of the things that might be happening in the future, and some of the concerns and ways to think about this in either in a policy context. So that's the overall structure of what we're going to go through today. So things you may already know about when we talk about artificial intelligence: voice recognition, intelligent assistants, image recognition, or automated cars, or drones, or robots, capturing knowledge, or natural language processing, which is something which is advancing very quickly. And we'll talk about examples of many of these. And over on the right here is a diagram which shows artificial intelligence and says that it's the ability to sense, reason, engage, and learn. Basically, it's a way for machines to simulate thinking. And thinking can have many different forms. You know, it could be simple perception or sense. Computer vision, you know, various things are kind of mimics of what humans or other animals can do. And the way that that artificial intelligence is built, how do machines learn? That's what's known as machine learning. So we'll talk a bit about that. What is machine learning? A couple of examples, very brief talk about supervised learning and unsupervised learning, and how machines actually get smarter. So one of the things that we know well probably is voice recognition. When I pick up my phone and I say, "Hey Siri," it will respond. It will wonder what I want next. It will then have to listen to me and right, here we go. It will hear something that I say and make a response of some sort. All right. So that's a simple thing, voice recognition. It's been around for, I don't know, probably a dozen years at least. All right. In many different forms, whether you use Google, whether you use Siri, whether you use Alexa, different systems give different responses, but they all depend on voice recognition. Another thing that you're probably very familiar with, another aspect of artificial intelligence, is image recognition. When I pick up my phone and want to look at my bank account, I've set it up so that my phone can see, using its front-facing camera, my face, recognize that it's me, and give me, and hopefully only me, access to my banking information. So that's an example of image recognition. In India, I know that Alexa has been there for about 3 years, and it was very pervasive in many Indian households and many businesses. And when we talk about something like Alexa or Apple devices, you know, it's not just the thing that you might have on your desktop. It's built into many different things. It might run your television. It might run a stereo system. There's lots of different Echo devices that are sold by Amazon. 11 different devices in India last year. So, you know, it's become very pervasive. It's been around for 3 years. And what are some of the things that are asked? A recent article said that Alexa is told 19,000 times a day by people in India, "I love you." It's asked the question, "Will you marry me?" 6,000 times a day. Tens of thousands of times, or millions of times, it's asked different questions. And it's becoming more and more pervasive. It's becoming something that people depend on. Even people who are concerned about privacy and security might have a device in their home that can listen to them all the time and see them much of the time, because we have traded for convenience. Now, how does that work? How does the system work? It's basically a number of different small subroutines or programs, different algorithms. So first, when I say, "Hey Siri," it has to detect that a trigger word has been said, that I have asked for Siri or that I have asked for Alexa. And then it has to realize that I'm speaking to it, so it has to recognize speech in some way. And then from that speech, somehow it has to determine what the intent is. What is the question that I'm asking? It has to recognize my intent by recognizing my speech. And then it has to do whatever I ask. It has to tell me a joke. It has to turn on the television or something. It has to execute some command. And over time, there are more and more execution protocols that have been built into these personal assistants, to these intelligent assistants. They can do more and more things. They're getting better and better at speech recognition. They're getting better and better at recognizing the intent of the question that's being asked of them, because artificial intelligence is moving right along. Here's another example of an artificial intelligence device, a drone. So drones don't always have artificial intelligence, but think about what a drone does. It's a very complicated device. Just thinking about this idea that you have a machine with a number of propellers that stays stable, right? Now, a normal drone might do this because you're running it off of a remote control. Oh, too bad, because drones aren't themselves very smart, but newer drones now have artificial intelligence built into them. So here's an example of one that was released last year. It is so smart that it flies itself. It can recognize trees, it can follow a person. You can use it to do all sorts of things, and it has video cameras in it. Now, if you think about what a cinematographer might do to try to capture these sorts of scenes, it's a really complicated process. This machine has to fly around, has to avoid objects, has to follow a subject. It can track you even when it can't see you if you set it up to do that. That requires a huge amount of intelligence and sensing capability. Here it is flying through some industrial plant. It has to be able to avoid all sorts of obstacles, take pictures. Here it is flying through a landscape. It requires a huge amount of intelligence to be able to navigate that quickly, to be able to avoid obstacles that efficiently, something that machines with artificial intelligence can do much better than people can do. Here's another example. Self-driving cars. So this is a short video of the interior of a Tesla being driven. So as it said, the driver here is doing nothing. Notice his hands aren't on the wheel, his feet aren't on the pedals. So this artificial intelligence has to do so many things at once. It has to recognize vehicles. It has to recognize pedestrians. It has to recognize obstacles. It has to be able to read stop signs. It has to be able to read a map. It has to understand speed limits. It has to be able to control the vehicle, all quickly enough so that it does not get in an accident. That requires a huge amount of intelligence, a huge amount of sensing of the environment, a huge amount of responding to the environment, a huge amount of image recognition, and a huge amount of execution. Now, self-driving cars are something that are becoming more prevalent in many ways. There are many examples of at least partially self-driving cars that are available for sale here in the United States. My understanding is that in India, there's been a decision to disallow self-driving cars. So I think this is one example of how the system has thought about what are the implications of having machines that drive through the streets of India. And my understanding is that a decision has been made that the government has taken a clear stand against using self-driving cars. The government does not want to put employment opportunities for skilled drivers at risk. So there's a policy decision. If we have self-driving cars, it puts a lot of people out of work. Then there's an environmental decision. The roads in India are not conducive for self-driving cars. Cities like Delhi and Mumbai have roads that overflow with vehicular traffic at any given time of the day. And then here's kind of an insulting comment. Further, drivers in India do not follow the traffic rules. So would it be better or worse to have machines that are driving around India making decisions than having Indian drivers drive around making decisions? The decision has been made that it'd be better to keep driverless cars off the street for now. Robots. So there's a company, Boston Dynamics, which builds robots. Here's an example of one of its robots. Now, I'm going to give a few different short videos of these robots working. This first one is kind of a cute example of, I don't know if you can hear the audio, but this is a robot that is dancing to a tune. Now, basically what this is showing is that this robot has amazing dexterity. The machining of this is extraordinary. But this is a robot that looks like a human, arms and legs. computer vision, hear sounds, and dance, right? Dances better than I do, right? And dance with a partner, and dance to the music. Now, it's possible that this was just programmed to do this one task, and although this is a complicated task and requires a huge amount of dexterity, it's simply a task, dance, right? Boston Dynamics makes other types of robots. This yellow robot is a dog-like robot called Spot, right? Notice it has an arm, it has 4 legs, an arm where the dog's head would be, but it has vision and artificial intelligence built into it. Here is Spot. This is now for sale for about $75,000 American. It would be possible to purchase one of these robots. Now, what it shows is that it can go all sorts of places. Difficult terrain is not a problem. Dangerous environments are not a problem. They can actually work together to play soccer, to carry people, to pull a truck. They can fall down and get back up. That again requires a huge amount of perception of gravity, ability to coordinate its actions, things that we would think of nervous systems doing in animals. Now I'm going to show one more video of Spot. Here it is. It's been programmed to go to this door and open the door. All right. Now, when it does this, this human is trying to interfere with this task. And I'm showing this because what this robot, Spot, is showing is persistence. It is going to accomplish this task, no matter how much it is being impeded by this human. Now notice this person is taking it and pulling it backwards. It's responding to that. It's saying, I still see and sense the door. I still know what my task is, and I will be persistent until I accomplish it. I will not be stopped. This is both amazing and somewhat chilling because it shows task persistence in a robot by artificial intelligence. It had a task, which was to open that door, and it would not be stopped. I think it's something to think about as we go further into this. Another thing that artificial intelligence does very well is knowledge capture and deployment. So, more than 24 years ago, a artificial intelligent machine, Deep Blue, was able to beat the world's best chess player at the time. That's old news. About 10 years ago, Watson's Jeopardy was able to capture knowledge and able to win at this very popular American quiz show game, Jeopardy, to beat the best human Jeopardy players at the time. So this is an example of knowledge capture and use. A few years ago, 2017, this program AlphaZero was able to beat the other best chess programs and anyone in the world at chess and anyone in the world at Go, maybe even a harder game. Now, the amazing thing about this was previous chess programs had been trained by looking at how humans played games and learning from their mistakes and their winning strategies. AlphaZero was able to do it just by being given the rules of chess or the rules of Go and came up with strategies that humans had never used before and has so far been unconquerable. So that's an example of artificial intelligence learning by basically a reiterative process where it would just learn the rules, play the game again and again as quickly as a very smart computer can, and come up with strategies that humans had never used and become the best chess player in the world. Well, here's another example. So I talked about image capture before, facial recognition. Now, I'm going to run through this quick video, just show this to you. Do these people look real? To me, they look real. In fact, as I first saw this video, I was thinking there's a point right around there where there was a person who looks a lot like me. None of these people are real. They are all images that are generated by artificial intelligence that has looked at a number, huge database of human faces and has determined that it could generate human faces using those characteristics. I want you to keep this video in mind and the types of faces that are demonstrated here. But that's something that artificial intelligence can do quite quickly. Here's another example that I found relatively astounding. Oh, back for a second. All right. This is an example of artificial intelligence that was given image capture capacity to look at all of Rembrandt's paintings. All of the portraits that Rembrandt, who's been dead for over 300 years, had done, and asked to draw a facsimile of a Rembrandt portrait. So it determined what are the characteristics of Rembrandt portraits. What are the types of lighting? What are the types of clothing? What do the eyes look like? What are the facial characteristics? What is the skin tone? And then on a fancy printer, able to regenerate what's considered the next Rembrandt. It might be hard for most people to distinguish this from an actual Rembrandt, but it's not. It's a computer-generated portrait called the next Rembrandt. It's a test case of artificial intelligence. Now, here's a site called thisxdoesnotexist.com. And if you go to this site, what it comes up with are a number of things which artificial intelligence has generated just by looking at numerous examples of things and then asked to generate an artificial intelligence variation. So let's say you were setting up a website and you wanted to show your team, and you wanted to show that your team was more diverse than it actually is. You could go to this site and start clicking through until you found someone who looked like what you wanted them to look like, right? I seem to be stuck here for just a second. Artificial intelligence is better than my intelligence at this point. Okay, here we go. All right. Now, if I go back to the site again, here's one. This startup does not exist. So what this artificial intelligence engine has been asked to do was generate what appear to be websites for companies that are startups that don't actually exist. So here's one called Astrofit. Get your groceries supplied by badly paid people because you're too lazy, right? Sets up a website, looks just like the sort of a website for some startup. Here's a bunch of people who don't actually exist. Here's the team, here's the billing business. None of this was generated by a human. It was generated by a machine that was told to generate something that looks like a startup, although no such company exists. There are a number of different examples. This rental does not exist. Looks like the things you might find on Airbnb. This waifu does not exist. Has drawn up pictures of manga faces and stories. This URL does not exist. This chemical does not exist. This resume does not exist. This snack does not exist. All of these things are generated by artificial intelligence based upon learning what people do when they generate these sorts of programs, these sorts of sites, and then mimicking that. Here's an example of a deepfake video. Mark Zuckerberg, the head of Facebook. Oh.
I wish I could keep telling you that our mission in life is connecting people, but it isn't. We just want to predict your future behaviors. Spectre showed me how to manipulate you into sharing intimate data about yourself and all those you love for free. The more you express yourself, the more we own you.
Clearly, that's not something Mark Zuckerberg would say, and that isn't Mark Zuckerberg saying it. But artificial intelligence has been able to make a reasonable facsimile of Mark Zuckerberg saying something that he wouldn't normally. Here's the leader of North Korea in a deepfake video.
Democracy is a fragile thing, more fragile than you want to believe. If the election fails, there is no democracy. I don't have to do anything.
I find this rather chilling in light of recent political events in the United States, but this is a video that for some people might be indistinguishable from the real thing, but it clearly is not the real thing. Clearly, these are not things that the leader of North Korea would say. So facial image recognition is something that's developed a lot. You probably recently know about the insurrection in the United States and people that stormed the Capitol. Many of those people used social media, and on social media, put up pictures of themselves. Some hackers went to the website Parler, where many of these videos were stored, and used an artificial intelligence image recognition system to pull out images of people who were at that riot that day. So this is a site called Face of the Riot, where some hackers have put this online and said, if you know any of these people, please get in touch with authorities in the United States, right? So this is a way for, it feels almost like vigilanteism, right? The vigilantes are helping people find these people who broke the law in the United States, right? Now, an example of that is a company called Clearview AI, which is now being used by many law enforcement companies in the United States to scrape faces off of social media, to identify those faces, and then being able to use those to identify people who might have committed crime. Now, Clearview AI is very controversial. Many people think that it breaks basically every privacy rule possible. Clearview AI, as it says here in the bottom, it has asked for the ability to do a bunch of looking at faces for social reasons, like dating or professional networking, or people are concerned that this will be used to identify homeless people or drug users or others. And the United States hasn't regulated this, but some other countries have. So for example, Canada has decided that Clearview AI is basically an invasion of privacy, basically the same as having people in a police lineup. But this is a police lineup that's done by artificial intelligence for basically anyone who has their image online. I'm now going to give an example of something that's very recent, an advance in what's called natural language processing. And this is something that's available for anyone at OpenAI. It's a natural language processing system called GPT-3. Natural language processing is basically the field of how do humans and machines communicate, and how can machines learn more about human communication. Now, the amazing thing about GPT-3 is that it has essentially read and ingested everything that is text that is available on the internet, everything. Everything that humans have previously published online. Now, this natural language processing is something that was very powerful. So here's an example. We asked GPT-3 to write an essay from scratch. Now, the way it does it is it's read everything that's ever been written, and it uses statistical formats to figure out, so what would be the thing that would be written next? So you can ask it a question. So the Guardian periodical asked GPT-3 to convince us that robots come in peace, not to destroy humans, okay? And here's the beginning of the article. I am not a human, I'm a robot, a thinking robot. Okay? Goes on and on. Down at the bottom here, it has this, for starters, I have no desire to wipe out humans. In fact, I do not have the slightest interest in harming you in any way. Eradicating humanity seems like a rather useless endeavor to me. You may or may not find that reassuring. It goes on in the essay later on, it says, humans must keep doing what they have been doing, hating and fighting each other. I will sit in the background and let them do their thing. I found this article chilling, but this is an article that was generated just in answer to that simple one-sentence question. Give us reassurance that your robots will not destroy us. Now, this is actually an interview where GPT-3 was asked some questions, and then those answers were fed into an avatar and animated. So here is GPT-3 convincing us that it is not here to take our jobs.
I believe certain job categories cannot be replaced by AI, specifically where there is a need for creativity and empathy. Although the tasks can be delegated to machines, I believe that these jobs require what humans call heart. Computers are not able to express emotion or sympathy in any way. People expect this from caretakers. If they did not feel some kind of emotional connection with their caretaker, it would be very difficult for them to grow emotionally. Taking this one step further, I believe that no human job will be replaced by a computer. There are certain traits, openness to experience. I believe certain job categories cannot be replaced by.
I didn't find that particularly reassuring either. Now, GPT-3, having read everything that humans have ever published, has also read code that has been published. So it now has the capacity to write its own code. So here's a program called Inception, which can take, I would like code to build a model to classify images into 5 groups. The data set has 25,000 images. Here's the output program. So this is artificial intelligence writing a program to generate artificial intelligence. I think that's an interesting concept. Self-replicating machines. How can GPT-3 do this? It does it the way that computers advance. We have more and more capacity, more and more memory, better and better algorithms, faster and faster machines. So here is a history of natural language processing from October in 2018 through August in 2019, a year and a half ago. The largest natural language processor was NVIDIA's Megatron, was 8 billion parameters, 8 billion variables, basically. Then last February, a year ago, Microsoft put out a machine that was considered the state of the art at the time, Turing NLG, Natural Language Generator, and GPT-3, which was put out a few months later, had 10 times the capacity in terms of its ability to read language and synthesize language. So it's amazingly good. I mean, that video was a bit clunky and the essay was not horribly smooth writing, but it was very good. But it's the largest language model ever created and can generate amazing human-like text, but it's not true intelligence. It still really does kind of one thing. So that brings us to the point of, so how do machines actually learn? How do they get better? I'm going to talk briefly about machine learning, what machine learning is. So in narrow AI, which is basically where we are now, machines learn mostly by adaptive machine learning. You get a computer system to learn some intelligent behavior by training it on massive amounts of data. Well, places like Google and Amazon have massive amounts of data of us, of our buying habits, of our clicking habits. Right? So data is pretty easy to come by nowadays. And we talk about machines learning by what are called neural networks, modeled on the idea of a human neuron, that you have input at the synapses, you have output at the other end. Basically, people who work on machine learning have the same sort of a system. They have some input layer where there's whatever input you give, data of different types, the better data and the more data makes it stronger. And then some middle layer that's composed of algorithms, a number of different algorithms that can interact in different ways, depending upon the design of the machine. And then an output layer. That's basically what a neural net is. You may have heard that term. And there are several different types of learning. One's called supervised learning, where you put in raw data, but then you have some supervisor that says, I would like you to sort things, and here's an example of one type of thing that I want you to identify. It goes back into the algorithm, the processor, and gives you some output. That's called supervised learning. Second type of learning is called unsupervised learning, where you give it raw data, and the algorithm says, here's the data, it's not labeled. We are asking you to look for patterns in that data and sort it in some way. That's what's known as unsupervised learning, which is different. Another example here, supervised learning. Let's say you have three pieces of fruit, 2 apples and a banana. You train the model to recognize an apple, and then you show it a bunch of data of mixed fruit, and it says, this is an apple, right? And unsupervised, you give it a bunch of fruit and you say, sort these things into different types. Which of these are similar to each other and which are not, right? That's unsupervised learning. And then there's a third type that's called reinforcement learning, where basically, I think this is more like how humans learn, where you might be given some input, the output, and you might say, as a teacher, you might say, yeah, that's a good answer. That's reinforcement learning. That's basically more like how humans learn, I think, right? Now, I've talked about this as artificial narrow intelligence. That is intelligence specialized in one area. So those examples that I gave you may have been amazing, but they were basically doing one thing. The drone was designed to fly, avoid objects, and take pictures. Okay? The robots are tasked with specific things about moving around and doing things, but they're still programmed by humans, and they modify those in some way, but let's see. Okay, artificial general intelligence, we're not there yet. Intelligence that's equal to or greater than a single person. We can do more than one thing, right? And then a third level that people often talk about is what's called artificial superintelligence. That's intelligence greater than all of humanity combined. So here's a quote from many years ago. Let us think about an ultra-intelligent machine that can far surpass all the intellectual activities of any man or woman, however clever. An ultra-intelligent machine could design even better machines. There would unquestionably be an intelligence explosion, and the intelligence of man would be left far behind. Thus, the first ultra-intelligent machine is the last invention that ever need be made. So as I mentioned before, we're at this area of artificial narrow intelligence, but general intelligence and superintelligence are somewhere in the future. The question is when? When will machines actually be as smart as people or smarter than people? And there are lots of discussions about this. So we're somewhere at this point where we're still smarter, able to do more things, more adaptable, more creative in many ways, right? But when you survey a number of computer scientists and artificial intelligence experts and you ask them, so when will it happen that there will be this singularity, this point at which computer intelligence is smarter than people, right? 45% of people say sometime before 2060. 21% think that it will never actually happen, that it's not actually possible for machines to actually be smarter, more intelligent in an overall sense than humans. But we don't really know. These are projections of the future. So who's developing AI and why? Well, a lot of it's done by companies for profit motives. You know, Google and Alphabet, Microsoft, Amazon, they're all making money off of this. They're making money every time we click on something in Facebook, click on an ad, buy something off of Amazon, right? They learn about us all the time. There are companies like DeepMind and OpenAI that are basically just AI companies that are in some ways offshoots of these other companies. But governments are also investing. The biggest investor by far is China, over $140 billion in 2019. In comparison, the EU invested about $25 billion, and the United States invested somewhere between $2 and $4 billion at the level of the government. In addition, there was probably another 20 billion, but still dwarfed by what some other countries, specifically China, are doing. Very interested in AI for a number of reasons. And as we talk about machine learning, we have to realize that this is a field that continually expands. So one approach is basically an evolutionary approach, using genetic algorithms to think about how machines can make themselves better in the same sense that organisms have made themselves better over eons. And companies often say, what we're doing is, we're doing it to make the world a better place, right? So that raises for me some concerns and some policies we should think about. So I was very intrigued by the fact that India, as I mentioned, I think is very far and ahead of many other countries, certainly the United States. They're very thoughtful about this. So as I was preparing for this talk, I saw that there had been a conversation at this conference called RAISE last October. And I was looking at this, and one of the conversations was by Brad Smith, the president of Microsoft. And he was talking about this concept of responsible AI. So what are the things that he talks about? Fairness and unbiasedness, security and safety, privacy, inclusiveness, transparency, and accountability. Those are the 6 principles. And as I was reading this, I was thinking, well, that's an interesting set, but it's very nebulous. Sure, it'd be hard to say we're against fairness, we're against privacy. Sure, they have to be for all of these things, but what does that actually mean? How do you put that into practice? And one of the most interesting things I saw about this was this working document, Towards Responsible AI for All, again, put out by experts in the Indian government. And they had a very interesting dichotomy here. They broke down challenges to AI in these 2 different domains. Direct impact, that's impact on citizens being subject to some specific AI system, or indirect impact, so that's more societal considerations, okay? Are you affected individually or is society affected? And looking at the individual implications, they broke this down into 7 different categories. So understanding something about AI systems, understanding what it's actually doing. Is it doing something safe and is it reliable? Can you understand why a specific decision was made? If the government is using AI for a number of different things, chatbots answering questions for you, making determinations about allocation of resources, could we understand why that decision is being made? Is it consistent across stakeholders? Does it treat people fairly? If there are incorrect decisions that lead to some adverse decision, how could that be identified and how might it be reversed? How are you accountable for those decisions? How do you protect people's privacy at the individual level? And what are some security risks? Any computer system can be hacked. Any computer system can be at risk. So how do you prevent that for AI systems if AI systems are making important decisions about people's lives? And it talked about, again, in this working paper, relevant legal protection for AI-related concerns. Many of the harms caused by AI are not new, but the nuances associated with AI require a relook at the existing regulations. So again, I'm not a lawyer, but I think that this is an interesting kind of framework for thinking about this. So here are some examples. Guidelines or regulations established specifically for AI. There are none yet, right? Are there some for specific sectors? Apparently there are. Are there some that are relevant to all things like privacy? And these slides will be available to you if you want to look at these afterwards. And already in the discussions this week, there have been 2 talks on different aspects of AI, one about copyright law and AI, and one was both of these are very interesting. One about what's the legal impact on people who have passed away, or used in holograms or in films or in other ways. So, legal minds are thinking about this. Societal impacts, and largely the societal impacts are impacts on jobs, right? Impact of technology and innovations in the job landscape is not new. Major technological introductions in the past have resulted in increased productivity and redefined job profiles. So since I'm talking to a number of lawyers, I thought I should maybe take a look at how AI might affect the legal profession. If there are machines that can understand things and spit out text and have robots answering questions, why do we need lawyers? Well, we do. One of the futures for AI is improving what lawyers do by automating routine, mundane tasks. That's something that AI can do incredibly well, enabling your creative minds to focus on complex, higher value duties. All right? So here's a list of things that it talked about that AI would be particularly suited for: reviewing contracts, looking at profitability within a firm, increasing productivity of employees, avoiding research errors, right? If you've got all the text in the world already in your head, through GPT-3, you could set up searches to look for research errors pretty easily, I would think. And then some other concerns. And I mentioned this when I talked about AI a few years ago. Self-driving cars are also self-crashing cars, right? There'll be accidents. So what's the liability for a car if the driver is not actually a driver? Political manipulation bots have been something that have been very active, particularly in the elections in the United States in 2016 and 2020. Something I haven't talked about at all, autonomous weapons, killer robots, scary concept, which it's hard to get much information. Clearview AI for surveillance, deepfake videos, which I showed you. And then algorithmic bias and discrimination. And this is an interesting topic. The data that's put in generates what the output will be. And if the data that's put in has some bias, the output will have some bias. If you go back to that video that I showed, think back to that, and the faces that you saw were basically Western white faces, because that's what's put in, right? How do we address that sort of algorithmic bias and discrimination? So in thinking about these concerns in a big sense, for any primary goal, the odds of success are ensuring one's continued existence and goal integrity and acquiring resources to achieve the goal. So think of Spot, the robot dog, trying to get in the door, right? Its success was that it was focused on a particular goal. It would not be stopped. Had the resources, it had charged itself. It can plug itself in at night to recharge itself. Right? And it maintained goal integrity until it got the door open. So many people sometimes are worried that AI might become evil. Might be hard to define what evil is for a machine, all right? So it might be better to think about this as a justified worry that it becomes competent, but we haven't aligned the goals of machines with our goals. Because AI has the potential to become more intelligent than any human, we have no surefire way of predicting how it will behave. Think back to GPT-3 generating code. Once machines are generating themselves, we lose some control at some point, unless we have clear ways of explainability and accountability. And I used these slides a couple of years ago, but I think they're still incredibly relevant because these are smart people. The primitive forms of artificial intelligence we already have proved very useful. Stephen Hawking, artificial narrow intelligence. But I think the development of full artificial intelligence could spell the end of the human race. Once humans develop it, it could take off on its own and redesign itself at an ever-increasing rate. Humans who are limited by slow biological evolution couldn't compete. It would be superseded. Elon Musk said AI is capable that almost anyone knows. So that's one of the reasons why I want to show you a number of different examples of what AI can do now. And the rate of improvement is almost exponential. It's just getting better and better every day. So one thing is for sure is that we will not control it once we reach this point of digital superintelligence, if we reach that point. So go back to that slide that I had before. Some people think we may never get to the point of digital superintelligence. Some people think it might happen before 2060, within the next 40 years. But it's something to be aware of and just not to assume that it won't happen. So how do we respond to these concerns? We have to make sure that AI machines have values like ours, including do not destroy humanity and do not negatively affect the future. Difficulties are, well, whose values? Humans are irrational, inconsistent, weak-willed. Values differ across individuals and cultures. How do we determine what values AI should have? So, can we develop AI to discuss and address these issues such as bias? I mentioned that. Explainability. How did the machine come up with the decision it came up with? Is it harmless? What's the economic impact? Can it be provably beneficial as we develop it? That's something that I think we have to continually keep in mind. And I think there are some examples where we're developing things which may not be provably beneficial. Killer robots being developed by defense departments. Maybe Clearview AI. Maybe that's not provably beneficial. It's profitable, but that's different. So most of all, we have to be willing to think about this much longer term, not just 5 years from now. We need to stop saying we can't predict the future, so let's not worry about it right now. It's true, we can't predict the future, but we should it must do a better job of planning for it. So that's all I have to say for today. So thank you very much for listening. And I think Dr. Dash will
Yes. Thank you
take
so
over.
much. Yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Ravinchan. I must say that's a huge amount of research that has been put together, and so much of information that has been provided to the audience to ponder upon and think about the legal consequences that we may have to go through. Now, I must take this opportunity to also give our gratitude to Professor Stephen Barnes for constantly supporting and being with us all throughout. And now it's time to know from the Indian perspective and the legal answers that we may have in the future to come about this emerging technologies. And who could be the better person than Professor Dr. Vivekanandan to listen from? Sir, please, if you may unmute and start. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bishwa. Professor Purvi, Dr. Steve Robinson, and then Professor Stephen Barnes, and rest of the esteemed colleagues here. So I happily agreed to Professor Purvi's immediate mail that I will participate for the simple reason I thought there's an opportunity to learn more than to contribute in one way. When I see this marathon 1 month series, which I think Dr. Purvi is keeping it as a trade secret, right? When we struggle to get 2 days, 3 day program, she could run it for a month. It's definitely a trade secret. I wish sometimes she will license to HNLU also how to do that, right? With that, let me straight away get in because as you said, the time is given us 9 o'clock and probably there may be a lot of questions and after I speak. So I've been asked to give about 10 to 15 minutes. And I was quite happy because 10 to 15 minutes is which I can manage with natural intelligence, if not artificial intelligence. But the point is, after listening to Professor Stephen, starting with the Prime Minister's photograph on India, I don't know what much I'm going to speak about India and artificial intelligence in a sense. So, but anyway, I said, I did have few points through my, in fact, I thought I will do extempore. Then having inspired by, a professor there giving in PPT, very quickly, I just moved few of my points to slides so that easy for younger audience to follow in an online thing. So I think I have the permission to share the.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You can share.
Thank you very much. So, right. So I have my screen here. Let me expand. And so let me start with the India slogan, I call it, that India slogan was developed in 2018 late when the think tank called Niti Aayog was entrusted to bring out the policy paper. It interestingly said AI for all. So it was preemptive in a sense of very critical analysis. They said AI for all. So my journey will be a little bit about what India we are doing and also how they are looking at the whole thing. As you said, being a law person, it's sometimes you take a critical look at how things are happening. So let me take to you with few slides and few I'll skip because I think it was covered by Professor very well before me. So let me begin with by stating this is from a Portland professor who said this. And it's one of my favorite quotes for so many years now. And he did this almost 20 years back. He told we are approaching the new era with 21st century technologies, 20th century governing processes, and 19th century governance structures. I really didn't know about America in that sense, but it fitted India very well in a sense because we are 21st century technologies. We know that what's all happening around us. And then 20th century because we are slightly post-independence psyche, which we govern things. We don't jump into very modern governance always. And at the best, we can say we are all post-independence creatures. And then we have certain things in the mind. And 19th century governance structures, my friends abroad, there will be very stunned to know our entire criminal law is done by Indian Penal Code 1860. And then my Indian Evidence Act is 1872. And then my other things are all 18. I even tried to see in my family who was living in 1870, I could not track them, right? But I am governed by a 19th century structure which shapes my thought process, but I'm dealing with some technology which is something future. I never settle for past or present technology. We always settle for future technologies. And that is the love human beings have with technology. But that is the gap which law and technology is having in a sense. And that is what, from a lawyer's perspective, I'm really looking at it. Is it good, bad, or is it manageable? That is the whole question. If I look at the next one, as I said, Flintstones to genetic clones, human history in a way of history of technology. And yet the relationship between law and technology is constant in history. Probably, I don't know, during Flintstones, they must have given license for Flintstones because somebody would have set fire to some house. I do read Flintstones, comic strips, but this part was not actually done by the author. That somebody must have misbehaved with the Flintstones. They must have said, please surrender all your thing, or what you call, or it could be a very free country like America those days without much of gun control. So the point what I'm trying to put across is, it is a constant thing what is happening, technology and law, technology and human beings. This we have to keep it in mind when we are really approaching a subject like AI. If I look at the next part, as I said, in this whole evolution, the buzzword is AI. It has multiple definitions. People now call it as machine learning, deep learning. Whatever functional competency, is it going to replace humans in various facets is one of the big questions always when we talk about AI compared to past technologies. And again, this is a constant. What is AI? One way teaching sniffer dogs to drones in the sky. We are actually teaching, and they become smarter. I just now came to the room to talk to you, leaving my pet called Prince outside. That guy is too smart. He knows that I'm going to be locked up in a room for a couple of hours. So who taught him that I taught him? Right, now he is my master in sometimes. So that worry always is there about artificial intelligence. So what is the thesis and antithesis here? It is about creative and destructive ability. Creative ability, health, education, communication, consumerism. Destructive ability of technology is weapons, selective annihilation, displacement of the common man from a common job. That's also possible. The creative ability is about precise decision making from mountains of data. Destructive ability is also precise striking of any target you like. And this is very, very important, whether humans behind artificial intelligence or at a stage of artificial intelligence replaces humans and does on its own is no more science fiction. We don't need Asimov now, Isaac Asimov. This is happening in front of you. Nothing I'm going to call as fiction in the last 1 decade, because before I could spell fiction, it is there always, available. Now, the central question of science is always why. For technology, it's called how. For law, it's always for whom. That is the central part of how we analyze as a scientist, as a technologist, and as a lawyer. This is my perspective. So I'm sure that many lawyers will share this. So the boon and bane of AI is the central debate. AI is boon for governance goals, business stability, spread of health, universality of education, swifter justice decision. But looked on the bane is, I call again, labor displacement, arms and aggression, surveillance and targeting. I'm not telling anything new. Mr. Stephen touched upon this in the later part of his, on looking at AI and its impact, he was telling. But as I said, the struggle is also constant, in my opinion. People ask me, can you tell history in one sense? I tell it's simple. It is a battle of just and unjust. That thing more you can tell about history in one line. You can replace number of years, events, many things. But it is always about just and unjust. And the central characters are humans. And then the just and unjust manifestation and magnitude is always about sometimes technology, because the best technologies are always coming out of war. We know that. The best aircraft did not come for taking civilians. It came for targeting, enemy target. So this is the biggest thing which human beings, with all their understanding of cosmic understanding, philosophy, etc., cannot come to terms. As what Carl Sagan will tell, this dust of a dust what we are, but still this is a big question which every time it comes to us mind when we have mind-boggling technologies happening there. So if I look at the next one, as I said, frontline countries like US, UK, France, Japan, China were surging ahead. Barack Obama started in the beginning, and then UK started, and then everybody. India was, interestingly, one of the big repository of human resource of technology, because, as a law professor, every time I visit US, the guy in the visa section always thinks I'm an IT guy, right? You are from which company? IT guy, he says. I say that I teach IT law, right? Not IT, I'm IT guy. That's such a repository where I would say a little bit late. And sometimes it's good to be a little late, because sometimes you can do a catch-up game better. And probably that's what Professor Stephen in the beginnings talked about India itself. So government Niti Aayog came. I'm going to skip few slides. Healthcare, as I told you, agriculture, education, smart cities, smart mobility. Probably as a critique, I will tell every government has a standard template, right? Whether it's US government, Indian government, or anyone, there'll be a standard template that's good for government. If I am the prime minister, I will have the similar template here. The structures is proposed two centers, research of excellence called CORE, and international centers for transformational AI, ICT AI. I met Mr. Amitabh Kant in Bennett when he came there. I told him he's very good in this kind of acronyms, because when I met him long back in Kerala, when he was the tourism secretary, he coined the term God's own country for Kerala. If you remember, he was the tourism secretary. So I said, sir, it's very good what you're doing. Just smile. He didn't say anything. So the CORE and the ICTAI was two big creations, what they envisaged in the 2018-19 document. And most importantly, they set three strategic visions: opportunity, A for greater good, and A garage, they called. Because I even tell that to my students, if you want to be a billionaire, you should be a dropout from a degree program, and your father should own a garage, right? These are the two which was standard template which billionaires have made in the last 20 years or 30 years, right? If you have gone PhD, I think I don't even a chance of getting a few lakh rupees in my life. So this is one way of humorously putting about the word garage. The garage for 40% of the world, we can do that. That was the aim what they put in. Now, as I said, again, acronyms, ICON, CROSS, CASTLE, CITIT, all these are available in Niti Aayog site. You can go through and see what these acronyms are. And again, two-tier approach called CORE and ICTAI. Now, what happened? 2018 to 10, we deliberated public policy, think tank forums, all that. The COVID pandemic brought the intermission all over the world. Not only for India, everywhere, there was a break. Intermission, right? It was not normally in TV, you have a movie, you have a commercial break. And this is not a commercial break. This is a panic break, which can happen. And so everything is now in standstill. But as we are moving ahead, and again, there could be traction in India about how to actualize and do things like that. As you said, that still the basic foundation of a good human resource and basic foundation of putting education first, all that is there. I'm sure that these are, as far as IT is concerned, it's always the sector is doing more than even government projection. We have seen this for the last few decades, right? Government is conservative many times than what the industry in India does. As far as this sector, I cannot talk about other sectors. So the global developments and national perspective is there, positive. The caution side is the fiction of machines managing the universe. And arts and liberal people, thinkers, have a different way, like legal researchers looking at it. Not the same exuberance, what normally shared by the technologists and the business people. This is where I thought I'll spend few slides for you to reflect upon. As I said, human and machine, if I say, what distinguishes? This could be one fundamental question. What distinguishes is a very complex concept called ethics. Ethics. This is very complex for human beings. And we take this, sometimes I take business law class, I tell business ethics, it's an oxymoron, people will tell. many times, business and ethics. But the point is, it is so complex, ethics is, that we know it's there, but we don't know what it is. And this also, Professor Robinson, I saw, interestingly said about human beings, different in their way they look at it. So it's ethics, this is what I say. So one of the studies I was just looking, one of the good work done by the, Center for Internet Society from Bangalore, Eleanor Hickok spoke few points. How do AI should behave in India? Will it take autonomous decisions? And should it take autonomous decisions or not? Should always human be in the loop? Is it a personhood for AI? Who would push the word called red button? AI or a human? Is there a difference between corporate using AI and government using and others using? Should children be part of AI? Should we be held responsible if harm arises? These are the critical questions, not just, I would say, Indian context. It's almost global. Today, national becomes very redundant as far as the juggernaut of technology is concerned. It's almost global in many, many concerns. So the current, if I look into, we come to our own tribe legal ecosystem and AI. Just to give you ROS, tracks changes of laws in real time. Lex Machina, analytics software, in fact, reads the judge's mind. Very interesting. It is reading the judge's mind, which lawyers try most times unsuccessfully, right? Luminance, one due diligence strategy. Contract Express, instant drafting, right? Central theme now, justice delivery. In other words, who will judge the code? It is the code which does, and who will judge the code. Though it's an early stage of science fiction theme, having a customized court app in your mobile, a customized avatar of a judge agreed by both the parties, and the potential danger of hacking the mind of a virtual judge for a favorable judgment. These are all, I should not let more because I'm writing a script and it'll be a copyright issue. So I'm keeping that to myself. The question lingers, will it replace humans eventually? That is the big question, which interestingly, Professor Johnson said, let's not talk about the future. Let us think about, present, right? Let us now be present. Let's not talk about future. But human beings' problem is simple. They know they don't live forever. But always, from Aristotle to Plato, they were thinking about the future only. They were talking about future. And professors are too bad in that. They are never in the present. They talk about a future many times to the students when they talk. So I am no exception to that. So for now, will it replace for now? Honorable Justice of India, Sri Bobde, recently said, I wish to point out it's not an attempt to introduce artificial intelligence in the decision-making process. The system we are looking is reading speed about 10 lakh words per second, which means you can read anything and ask any query, it'll give you the answer. However, there is no thought of substituting the judicial decision-making process of the human mind. Current Chief Justice is telling. Now the big task is for the future Chief Justices, whether they're going to endorse the same or maybe, what you call as will be a different situation. I really, really don't know. So let me tell you my last word. Hey, Alexa, I'm closing my session. I'll be with you soon. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I must say that the opening words of our director, ma'am, Purvi ma'am, was like about your speaking ability. I myself is super amazed with the lecture that I just experienced. Now, there's a small request to all the audience. If you have any questions, you may direct that to me. But I would.
Sir, your audio is not there, Vishwa sir.
Yeah, it's there, I guess.
It's not muted, but audio is not there.
Can you hear me?
No, no.
Can you hear me?
No, sir.
Sir, we can. Vishwa sir, we can.
We can hear. We can hear.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess my mic is working perfect. Sorry for that. With your permission, Dr. Steve and Professor Vivekanandan, we would take some questions right now from the students and from faculties as well. We have a common question by Kahan Shah and Kushbir, one of few of our students, who are talking about liabilities. Like if anything has been created, then how do we attribute liability of something which goes wrong on part of the machines, which has been a part of the process? And how do you think the state should respond to that? Dr. Steve, you can start with.
Well, that seems to be like a legal question. I'm not a lawyer, but I don't know. I mean, at what point does, when you see things like GPT-3 writing code, right? If it's writing code, is it the creator of the code, or is the person who created the program that allowed GPT-3 to write code their creator? And then I don't know who owns it. I don't know, you know, I think that this was discussed in one of the previous lectures where they were talking about things like copyright law. As things get more and more diverse from the human in charge of creating it, at what point does the machine actually become the creator of it? If a self-driving car runs somebody over, I think that this is an issue. You know, the car is driving itself, the driver isn't. So is the manufacturer of the car the culprit? I don't know. That's a legal question to which I have no idea what the answer should be.
Precisely, and for that we have Dr. Vivekanandan, so we can have sir's opinion about it.
As you said that, I'm pretty sure that artificial intelligence should answer itself, who's liable in one way. But the simple phenomena always law uses very ancient examples in deciding things. If there is a clock, there is a clockmaker.
Right.
As simple as that. And then somewhere you have to find out, because as we said, phenomenal judgments are based on this interesting analogy fictions, I call it, right? So I'm sure that such things will be handled. There may not be much of a problem. And this is one small hope. Still, lawyers can beat artificial intelligence in some level.
Right, sir. And that is precisely why we should not give up our hope, because we definitely would find out a solution.
So I'm going to ask a question. Again, I'm not a lawyer, but so I'm thinking, when you're suing a person or going after a person for his liability, that person wouldn't have existed if their parents didn't exist. So should you go after the parents? It seems to me a similar question with artificial intelligence. Once a program has been programmed to make new programs, who actually is in charge of the consequences of decisions or actions that program might take? I don't know. I think it's a question of you know, what's the how many generations do you go back to assign liability?
I will answer that in a different way. Tell me the decision, I will tell you, tell me who your lawyer is.
So that's the situation we are going through, sir. And Professor Vivekanandan, I have a specific question for you. It's from Dr. Anand Shinde, one of our faculty members out here. He's asking this question with regards to the published article by the Yale University in 2019. And it is observed that the biggest social cost of the new technological era of AI is the erosion of trust and control over democratic institutions. And he's asking, at present, the governments of many countries, including India, are using AI technology in administrative decision-making process without having an independent regulator to evaluate algorithmic biases and discriminations. What is your opinion about it?
That is not just artificial intelligence. This is a prescription which people have been telling, what the earlier Swedish experiment of ombudsman and, you know, what you call it, the ethical person, even in that Center for Internet Society is also talking about creating your whole question of Lokpal. Everything is about same principle, that you cannot be a party and a judge yourself. So you need to have something, and that all the more becomes necessary, especially with this type of technologies, which you have, as Professor pointed out, about the fake videos, many things we are hearing about, it is hacked and then letters are planted on you, all that. This is mind-boggling in a way how technology works today. And physical thing is not there. You can do that from anywhere, any part of the world. So in that context, it is very crucial that's what I said. The good template is okay. That all that we do, and I told you, technology per se is not good or bad. It is who drives the technology is the whole question, as simple as that. So naturally, the necessity to put all this in place is very important before even we get excited about the benefits and fruits of such technologies. So it is very essential. But as I said that sometimes, believe me, we are good. This type of attitude is why government is not good for vice-chancellors also, I feel.
Good, sir. Dr. Steve, I have a question for you. It might be a policy making question because you have been a part of the policy making process. That one of your slides was mentioning about the amount of money the states are investing in the development of AI. Why is it that the United States is not putting more money with regards to development of the technology as compared to the other states? Is it that they are not accepting the technology, or they're not willing to take a pace with the technological development in other countries? What is your take on it?
I think that's a general question about American spending and the idea that government spending should not supplant private investment. So I think in the United States, the investment is private investment. We basically are not, I think we're way behind in terms of regulating and thinking about technological advances, and we're leaving it up to Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos and others who are becoming the richest Westerners, at least, and deciding that they should do the investing rather than the federal government. And I think that's just an aversion to the idea of federal spending in America.
Great.
I think it's that simple.
Okay, now I must move to Dr. Vivekanandan. One of our students, Kahan, is asking, we have experiences from Saudi Arabia, like countries where citizenship is being granted. So do you think artificial intelligent machines be granted citizenship and they should be treated separate identity altogether?
The last part I could not grasp.
Should the machines be granted with citizenship and be taken and treated as separate identities?
Well, as you said, it's more a kind of a interesting media news always that Sophia has been granted a citizenship in Saudi and other places. So the point what I said is, that's what I said. It is not we as generation. I don't know how the future generations are going to even look at the whole thing. Forget about artificial intelligence. Human beings themselves are tremendously different in many generations, how they look and how they deal with things. Am I right? We had avatars, Second Life, many things has come, which you tell to me, it looks crazy, but it looks real for many. So I really don't know the future generations may even give a personhood status. That is one of the big questions. Is it personhood for AI is the big question. Till today, no. You must be knowing that photograph of the Indonesian, Naruto, which took a photograph, selfie, and the IP law went till the end, and the court said, as of now, animals don't have copyright, right? Intellectual property. So that was the case. As Professor was pointing out, Rembrandt and many things. Do you get my point? Is this for some kind of vague, kind of a flash news to do, or really a person who will depend upon a future generation, I feel, but not for now.
Okay. So Dr. Steve, one of our student, Bertha Jagirdar, she's asking that you talked about uncontrolled collection of data by the machines, by the algorithms that we feed. So how do we draw a line between collection of private data and public data? Because data protection is going to be the emerging area, and it's going to be creating a lot of budge questions in the near future. How do we draw, and how do we deal with the behavioral pattern of the process through which we collect the data?
I have no idea. I know that it seems to me that in my lifetime, people have been willing to give repeatedly to give up privacy for convenience, right? To post pictures of themselves, to have devices in their kitchens, living rooms, bedrooms, all over their house that can monitor them, and to post pictures of themselves. Like, I was astounded when there were these riots at the Capitol in DC, that people then took pictures of themselves and posted them online for other people to harvest. So I think in terms of privacy, the question for most people is, how do you protect yourself? Because the company, at least in America, we're leaving it up to the companies to protect us, and they aren't. So the best, it feels to me like there's this phrase, the best offense is a good defense, right? Think about how you protect your own privacy, because in my country, I don't think the government is going to do it for us. I think, the European Union, I think, has stricter guidelines. Other countries do. We're the Wild West in every way here. So you can't learn from the United States how to protect privacy. But I think you also have to think about your own actions and how you're willing to give up your privacy for convenience, which we do again and again and again. We buy more and more devices that give more and more surveillance. We do more shopping online. We allow news to be fed to us and then like it and get fed more similar news. And so narrow our options. And we do that repeatedly. So I think your personal habits are incredibly important in terms of protecting your privacy.
Thank you, Dr. Steve. That draws to the bottom line of consent that we give for our data, that we pass it on. One last question, as we have paucity of time, for Dr. Vivekanandan. So you talked in one of your slides regarding the Supreme Court's adaptation to the artificial intelligent machines and the process. Justice Bobde is saying that no, the processing through AI is not good. While on the contradiction, Justice Chandrachud is appreciating the involvement of AI. What is your take, being a legal academician in India? It's a both very bad.
See, what I'm trying to tell, what I said is, that's why I said a thesis and antithesis.
Yes.
I said there is a bit of, it is not contradictory, that's what I said, but contradictory situations arise again and again when you really look. So the whole question again, that's what I said, if I don't want to use the word law, that sometimes is not so welcomed at times also, the way sometimes law is, done and, shoved on throat. But the point is, I would even use the word public policy. A kind of consultation, public policy, this is very, very important, because let me tell you, the juggernaut of technology, nobody rolls back, right? It just rolls. And then, what you call as I say that, very interestingly, I say the challenge is this. Technology is a byproduct of a single brilliant mind. A single brilliant mind. Technology is a byproduct. Now, if I ask the quiz, law is a byproduct of, if I put the fill in the gaps, I don't know how many will answer correctly. I would say, honestly, if technology is the byproduct of a single brilliant mind, law is a byproduct of collective frustration. Right? No law has been passed by everybody. If I come to power, I'm going to change the law. That is what my view is. So, because technology is something outside we thought. And then law is something, everything what we do is we as people. But the challenge now, so far technology is a brilliant product with a single mind. If technology is itself the lawmaker, and if technology itself is the one which will run the law, then this analogy will be going to be much more, mind-boggling about who decides things. So the point what I'm telling, at this point, as he rightly pointed out, we have to, even though the future part of technology is not in our control, but at the same time, how to augment technology, because there is good, always what is about justice good and, not so good, you call it. So in that choices only we are making, policy decisions. So all the more, that's why I always say law is a very serious business, not to be left alone to lawyers. I used to tell. But now I'm telling you, technology is a very serious business, not alone to be left to technologists, right? So that is what I want to tell. I would say that we travel in this contradiction quite often.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, Dr. Steve Robinson and Dr. Vivekanandan. We have definitely delivered and the whole contours of artificial intelligence and its positives and negatives. And I would like now Professor Dr. Purvi Pokhriyal to please give the closing words before we formally go for the official vote of thanks.
Thank you, Bishwa. I mean, it's always a pleasure to listen, Professor V.C. Vivekanandan. Thank you so much. And it's great to know about the kind of an AI intervention that Dr. Steve Robinson has showed in the presentation. Thank you, Dr. Steve, for making a brilliant presentations. And there are some of the questions are really philosophical in nature, and it's eye-opening, and we all are keep on discussing and debating on the implications of AI in the real time. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. At this moment, I would like to apologize for a few questions which I could not take because of the paucity of time. And also to introduce to our speakers that at Institute of Law, Nirma University, we also have founded the Center for Artificial Intelligence and Law, one of its kind in India. And at the center, we have a few student researchers who are working with us. And one of the student researchers is Samiha Yadav, who is going to propose the vote of thanks for the day. Samiha, please.
Thank you, sir. I, Samiha Yadav, on behalf of Institute of Law, Nirma University, would like to express a heartfelt gratitude to Dr. Steve Robinson and Professor Dr. V.C. Vivekanandan for presenting such valuable insights on a very current and evolving topic, and putting a practical and real perspective on how AI has developed till date. Artificial intelligence is rising in different forms and has a lot of potential across almost everywhere. It is great to know more about this because definitely this understanding will give us better direction to lawmaking. This short time session could pave a way to opening and building better understanding towards AI and also comprehend its consequences. I would also like to convey my sincere thanks to our Dean and Director, Professor Dr. Purvi Pokhriyal and Professor Stephen Barnes for their constant presence, support, and for providing this wonderful opportunity. Lastly, I would like to thank the faculty members and students for their esteemed presence in today's session. I hope this session left us with many views to dwell upon and provided us a panoramic view on artificial intelligence and law. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Samiha. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all from my end. A pleasure meeting Mr. Steve as well as Professor Stephen. Thank you.
Thank you all.
you.
Thank you for inviting me and letting me
Thank you.
participate. I appreciate it.
Thank you for